Wolter. I'm a researcher with Minnesota Compass. And I'm going to be sharing with you a demonstration and some information about our Build Your Own tool today. Sherry, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Sure, I'm Sherry Holm and I work on Minnesota Compass as well. I'm the website coordinator.
We have a really nice sized group today. It's a small group. And so I wonder if we maybe just want to go around really quickly and introduce ourselves and your organization that you represent, and maybe just, what you, your experience with the Build Your Own tool and maybe what you hope to learn today. Lynn, why don't we start with you?
I'm Lynn Kaiser. I work for Minnesota State Community and Technical College. Today I happen to be sitting in Fergus Falls, but I teach in Moorhead and I teach in Detroit Lakes, teaching marketing research. And so what I'm really interested in is to try to figure out if this would be a tool that I could use in curriculum for a student learning experience and a student, maybe even a signature assignment.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lynn. Rick.
Hi, I'm a retired K-12 educator. I work for Extension out of the Brainerd Regional Office in a support position. And Minnesota Compass has just kind of been on the radar for me. And I used it about a year ago. And then a couple of weeks ago, I had an educator ask about, the demographics of a county and by zip code. And I said, sure. And I got them some reports out of there, but then also told them they could do a lot of it on their own, because actually the person who was asking for someone else already. Going, okay, I just want to refresh on the tool so that it's easier to help someone else use it.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Thanks, Rick. Ray.
Thanks. I'm Ray Wood. I'm with the Family Partnership, and I've used the Minnesota Compass a little bit in our storytelling around the communities we serve. We're very place-based nonprofit, and so understanding the demographics and how that can inform storytelling to foundations, communications, and so eager to learn a little bit more about how to use the tool today.
Great. Thanks, Ray. Welcome. Susan, or Sue, as I hear Sherry refer to you.
Yes, Sue Dieter. I'm with the Minnesota State Energy Center of Excellence, and I am just always looking for tools that help me and help the center reach our audience. So I'm very excited to learn more about the Minnesota Compass.
Great. Welcome, Sue. Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad Griffith. I'm a realtor and also participate in a group over on the east side called Friends of Sweet Hollow. So it's part of Sweet Hollow. So the topic, seemed interesting when I saw it pop on my Facebook feed and signed up.
Great to have you here. Thanks, Brad. Rebecca.
Yeah, I work with health partners at Regions Hospital, and I do patient demographic data, and I do fundraising as well. So I'm just here as a data nerd to kind of dig around.
Great. Well, you're in good company. Glad to have you here. Elena.
Hi, my name's Elena. I run programs and research for a small young nonprofit called Foster Advocates, and we've used Minnesota Compass for some regional alignment with some of the analysis of from state reports on child welfare out of home care trends. But I'm interested in seeing how we can more intentionally use that, or other ways that we can use Minnesota Compass for some of our foster related data analysis.
Great. Well, welcome, Elena. Well, welcome to all of you today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are a pretty small group today. So as I'm going through the material, do please feel free to, drop a question in if you have one, or raise your hand by indicating with the icon, the hand icon, and Sherry or Jen will read out your question. I'm happy to answer those. We don't need to wait until the end of the presentation. And then I did want to mention that we are recording today. We hope to share this presentation out with those who could not attend today. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my slides. All right, can everybody see my slides okay? Quite great. So as I mentioned, I'm Ellen Wolter. I'm a researcher with Minnesota Compass. And today I'm going to share with you about the Build Your Own tool primarily and a little bit about our project. So Minnesota Compass is a social indicators project. We've been around for about 15 years. And what we do is we provide data for communities across the state. And we want to make sure that the data that we're providing is useful and relevant to all of you. So we work closely with communities to select the data that we put on our site. We operate with support from a consortium of foundations who believe strongly in data-informed decision-making and in democratizing data, which is a word people are saying a lot, but making it available to communities so that they can access it to better understand what's happening in their communities. This is the primary data indicators that we have on our Minnesota Compass website. We provide data for each of these topic areas. We don't provide every single data indicator out there on each topic area. What we do is we work closely with community advisors to select 3 to 4 indicators that they feel are most relevant or most important to be tracking. And so for education, for example, we provide data on 3rd grade reading scores, 8th grade math scores, and high school graduation rates, because those were the data indicators that were deemed the most important for that particular topic area by our community advisory committees. But I'm going to focus mainly today on the Build Your Own tool and sharing with you how that tool works, some of the functionality and capability that goes into getting data for this particular tool, and then a demonstration after I've gone through my slides. One thing I do want to note, we are having some issues with our estimates that are coming through for some of our geographies that are non-standard, which I'll explain in just a little bit. And so we're working on updating that, and that will be updated in the next few days. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that. But all the functionality and the basics of how the tool works, we can absolutely share with you today. So the Build Your Own tool works a little bit differently from some of the other data on the rest of the site. And that is because there's so much functionality that goes into the tool to allow you to access data for small geographic areas, such as the Minneapolis neighborhood profiles, or small geographic areas in greater Minnesota locations as well. And so we use the following data sources that are listed in that top right-hand corner of the slide. We use American Community Survey 5-year estimate data, LEHD data, and then decennial census data. And the LEHD data there, that longitudinal employment household dynamic data, is kind of a hybrid of deed data and then census data, and it focuses primarily on Minnesota's workforce. So the topic areas that we include in the Build Your Own tool are listed here on this slide. So we provide all manner of data on demographics, economy, education, health, housing, transportation, and workforce. But the tool it's not possible to include state administrative data sources, for example. So high school graduation rates, that data is not available at really small geographic areas like by neighborhoods or census tracts. And so we don't include those sorts of data sources in the Build Your Own tool. The data that we have in the Build Your Own tool are available for many Minnesota communities across the state. We first started the Build Your Own tool with the neighborhood profiles, first in Minneapolis and St. Paul, because people were really interested in, well, I know this is what the whole city of Minneapolis looks like, but what does it look like for my particular neighborhood, for my particular community? And once those neighborhood profiles were launched, there was even more interest from people across the state, from greater Minnesota, who said, well, what does this look like for my different community here in greater Minnesota, beyond just a county, or a city? What about a school district? Or what about looking at different economic development regions? So that idea of, defining your community and users wanting to define their community in different ways just continued to grow and grow. And so we have just been developing the Build Your Own tool since then and enhancing it to best meet those needs. So we like to think about the Build Your Own tool as kind of a choose your own adventure story. If you read those books as a kid, or if your kid is reading those books now, there's a lot of different ways that you can go on a data adventure, if you will. There's a lot of functionality within this tool. So the first story or data adventure you could go on, if you will, is a building a profile. So you can build a profile simply by selecting on the map, and I'll demonstrate in just a moment how this works, by selecting a county or a city or a school district, and you just click on the map, and then it pulls down a data profile for you for that one geography that you're interested in. Okay, and these are just a couple of sample data indicators that we have in the data profile. You can also build a profile with multiple geographies. So if you're interested in looking at different geographic areas aggregated together, so in this case, this is Olmsted, Winona, Fillmore, and Houston counties, the tool takes the data from each of those counties and it aggregates them together into one profile. And so it kind of adds them all up. So you can do that for any of the geographies that are included in the Build Your Own tool. You can do that for neighborhoods. You can do that for cities, school districts, however it is that you define your community, you can build that data profile with the Build Your Own tool. Okay, and then just a couple of sample data indicators that are included in the data profile. The second data adventure you can go on is comparing profiles. So if you're interested in comparing different communities and seeing how they are benchmarked against each other, you can very easily compare the same type of geography, a city compared to a city or a neighborhood compared to a neighborhood. That's often a pretty standard geography. Or if you wanted to do, greater Minnesota compared to a city in greater Minnesota, that's possible as well. Okay, just again, a sample data indicator for you to take a look at here. You can also build a profile and aggregate different geographies together and then compare it to another profile. So if you were interested in comparing a profile you've built with school districts, there's one example here. And then you can also compare it to one county or another profile that you have built. So there's a lot of different functionality in terms of how you can compare different profiles and how you can build and then compare different profiles. Okay, and so again, just a sample data indicator for you to take a look at there. And then this is just another example. So you could take Minneapolis neighborhoods. Maybe you're interested in looking at 5 different Minneapolis neighborhoods. Maybe that's your service area, the service area that you're working in. Then you can mark that against the city of Minneapolis. Or if you wanted to, you could benchmark it against Minneapolis and St. Paul combined. Or maybe you're defining the Twin Cities area as the 7-county region. You could compare it to the 7-county region as well. And then the last data adventure we have is drawing a profile. So the standard geographies that we have, those predefined geographies like counties and cities and school districts, those boundaries are of course already drawn. But if you're not interested in those and you have a very specific or unique service area or a very unique place where you're hoping to gain access to specific kinds of data, the draw tool will allow you to draw specific boundaries so that you can access that unique community that you're interested in. So this is just one example. So drawing a profile. So the Greater Twin Cities United Way service area, it goes right through the middle of Washington County. So the Build Your Own tool allows the Greater Twin Cities United Way the ability to draw their unique service area in the tool and pull down demographic and economic data for that particular area. Another example is if you are working in some of the micropolitan areas like Duluth or St. Cloud or Rochester, you could draw the specific neighborhood profiles for those areas. We do have a separate Duluth neighborhood profile that are already drawn for you and that you can access pretty readily. But for St. Cloud and Rochester, we don't yet have those. And so if you're interested in drawing those neighborhood boundaries in the Build Your Own tool, you're able to do that. And so this is just one example here. And then one for Rochester. So this is the Meadow Park and Elton Hills neighborhoods in Rochester that you could draw and excess data for those particular areas. One of the things that we hear a lot in greater Minnesota, particularly in counties where there are micropolitan areas like Duluth or Rochester or St. Cloud, is, how can I get data for my community that takes out those larger urban areas like Duluth? I'm just interested in looking at the part of Olmsted County that doesn't have Rochester. So the build your own tool does allow you to do that. You can draw that area that pulls out more of that rural area that you're hoping to look at, because that larger Olmsted County data kind of is skewed a bit by that urban area. Okay, so let's take a look at it in action. I'll just stop there and see if there's any questions as I pull up my screen to share the demonstration of the site. Any questions before I do that? Okay. Forgive me, I'll get there, just a moment. There we go. Okay. All right, so this is our Minnesota Compass website. For those of you who have been on our site before, you might notice that we have a bit of a refresh or a facelift. Our team this past year did a wonderful job of updating the look and feel of Minnesota Compass. All of the same content is there, but we've just kind of reorganized things a bit and just freshened things up to have a more modern look, and we're hoping so you can help to find things a little bit easier. All of the data on Compass that I mentioned in that first slide, I'll just highlight this here first, is listed here. So if you're interested in things like high school graduation rates or data about arts and culture, all of that particular data is listed here. The data where we have a lot of what we call our geographic profiles, where we provide data by geography, are listed here. And so here's where much of the data I've already mentioned is listed. And then if you're interested in customizing your data profile, the build your own custom profile is listed here. So I'm just going to click on this here. And you can see those data adventures are listed here, those different functionalities you can build, compare, or draw is listed here. So I'm just going to first do a build. Okay, sometimes it helps to zoom in on the map so you can kind of see where you are. All of the geographies that you can select are listed under either statewide. So that's, of course, where anything that is statewide is listed. If you're interested in the Twin Cities, you can pull this down here. We have our Minneapolis-St. Paul neighborhoods or communities. In Minneapolis, you have neighborhoods and communities. So if you're interested in looking at those larger communities in Minneapolis, those are there. But also those smaller neighborhoods too are listed there for Minneapolis. And then we also have rapid bus station areas and light rail station areas too, for those of you who might be doing some work on transit development or housing development as well. And then the Duluth profiles are listed here. So there's a couple of different boundaries you can take a look at if you're working in the Duluth area. But I'm going to start up here to do my demonstration and just show you a couple of different things. So let's go with school districts. So you would select your layer, is how we refer to it, your geographic layer of interest first. And then depending on what you're interested in, you zoom in to find that. I'm just going to select an arbitrary area, but say you're interested in Malacca, you select that here, Ogilvie, Mora. So with all of those selected, those are all that you're interested in. They show up here, each of those that you have selected. And you might find, oh, oops, I accidentally selected an area I'm not interested in. You can delete that if you want to, or delete those that you accidentally selected, or go back and select them. So whenever you're ready with the profile that you've built, you then select View Profile. And it will show you on a map which ones you have selected. But then it will pull down a large data table, which again aggregates those 3 school districts together that I've selected. It's a long data table, so I find it's helpful to collapse the rows so that you can see the different topic areas. particularly if you know exactly what you're looking for. Oh, I'm looking on information related to disability. Well, here it is listed for me. Another thing that you can do is you can show the margins of error. This is important if you're working with really small geographic areas, particularly in greater Minnesota. So if you're interested in looking at those margins of error, you select that here and it pulls those down for you. And then the other thing I want to point out with this data table is, if you spent a long time building a profile, or more importantly, in the draw function, drawing a profile, you can bookmark the profile like this. So you select bookmark or share. And at the top, it will give you a link that you can cut and paste and then either bookmark on your computer or share it with other people. And when you go back to that link over time, you will have the most recent data available. So the data is typically updated in January with new data from the American Community Survey. And when that data is updated, if you go back to your link, then new data will be there. So I'm just going to go back to the Build Your Own tool, show you a couple of other examples. So the compare feature we'll go to next, again, allows you to select different profiles and then compare them. Okay, so why don't we go with zip codes this time? So these are all the zip codes in the state of Minnesota. And so you can find whichever area you're interested in and select those. Again, I'm just going to build an arbitrary profile. Okay, and so all of those that I've selected come up under comparison group 1. Again, if you've accidentally selected one, you can delete that out. When I'm done with the first group, I select this and it goes to the second group. So then I could compare it to other zip codes or one zip code, or I could go and compare it to another geography. Let's go to an economic development region. Well, I'd like to compare this to the North Central area. So then you select view comparison and it will pull down a profile comparing those two areas for me. And then the data tables for each of the profiles that you build, compare, or draw are all the same template. So it will all look the same in terms of the content there. Okay, so you've got the same options. I'm just going to stop there and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, so when you're ready to start over and move on, so then you can just select start over here and clear my selections. Now I'm going to move over to the draw tool to give you a feel for how this works. So what you do here, the same geographic layers are listed as they are in the build and compare feature. This is really just a reference layer. When you're drawing your profile, it's really just a way for you to select the layer that makes the most sense for you to orient yourself when you're doing the drawing. Okay, so I'll just select, let's see here, go to counties. Let's go to Wadena. And you have a couple of different drawing tools here. So you can do polygons, a standard square, or you can do a radius. So you can select, drop a pin in and do a certain mile radius around the area that you have dropped that pin in. And you change that here. So if you want to do a 1 mile radius, that's our default setting, or you could do 50. And you can do that for any of those draw functions. So I'll just show you how a polygon works. So here, you can select this wherever it is you want to draw. And then you double click. And then once that blue boundary is around it, that dark blue one, you know that you're ready to hit view profile. And then you select view profile. And it pulls down demographic data for just that area that you have drawn. And so you'll get the same data table as you do for the build and the compare. And as I mentioned, we're doing some updates on this particular feature. So that's why it's taking just a little bit of time. And then the same draw tools are available here. So again, this is another way to draw a polygon here. Or you can do that pin where you drop a pin in, and then you can change that buffer however whatever works for you, whatever area you're interested in. So we've had some people use this feature, for example, if they're working in smaller cities and they want to look at their demographic data beyond that boundary. So they are able to look at, a 20-mile radius outside that city to get additional demographic information for that smaller city. Okay, so I'm just going to stop there. Any questions or any features that you have questions about or like me to show you before I get off the Minnesota Compass website? Okay, I'm going to stop my share then. Go back to my slides. All right, so I just have a couple of parting slides if there aren't any questions. Just to say thank you for joining us today. We have a monthly newsletter if you're interested in getting in touch with us. If you're interested in following us on any of the social media that we have, Twitter and Facebook, we're always happy to have you do that. And then I should mention our team is always interested in learning about your experiences on the site or the tool and hearing your feedback, things we can improve. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or feedback for us. We're always happy to connect. And then, of course, if there are any questions before I end for the day, please let me know.
This is Lynn. And so here would be my question. I loved the data adventure. I loved how you laid this all out. And if I wanted to visit with somebody about how, as somebody teaching marketing research, how I could go about putting together even curriculum on a data adventure, where would I go?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I can start by sending you one of our insight articles we've put together that details each of those adventures and kind of different ways that you can put that together. We don't have a curriculum per se, but I can put you in touch with Sherry, and I think you guys can talk about maybe different options. We do presentations all over Minnesota, and so there may be a staff person available who can help support that.
Okay. And I would like that if you would give me those contacts.
Sure, absolutely, Lynn. Yep. Any other questions?
I have some kind of specific questions if you're able to stay on, but I don't want to take up everybody's time with my very specific demographic questions.
Sure, no, that sounds great, Alina. And I imagine folks may benefit from hearing the questions.
But I'll leave it open to any other general questions first.
I don't have a question, but I wanted other people. I found the resources on the website useful. The racial equity resource directory is something that Extension is, looking at. Who are we serving and where are they and whatnot, different programs that are part of Extension. And that was a resource I was able to share them.
Oh, thanks, Rick. For those of you who might not be aware, we have a racial equity resource directory, which provides a listing of programs and organizations that support that work across greater Minnesota and the Twin Cities as well. But you can search for your particular area where you live and work. Any other questions about the tool or feedback? Okay, great. Well, Elena, I think if you have some questions, feel free to ask them. For those of you who'd like to stay on and hear those questions, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today. And we appreciate your time learning about the tool.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, this is helpful to also know more how we can use the tool. We have used it a little bit already to break down state annual reports about youth who are in out-of-home care placements in the child welfare system. To be able to do some regional analysis, which has been really helpful to then use the Compass regions and your demographic data so we can do some comparison and say hey, here are the regions that are actually driving racial disparities in child welfare based off of their regional demographics. But I was wondering if like, one of the things that I've been really struggling in my role is there are not a lot of places that include foster care as one of the demographics around people. And I know as a statewide population level, that's kind of tricky to bring in for Minnesota Compass, but I was wondering if like you have any advice on some of the data you all are pulling in, or if there are any other places where that could be a demographic selection point. We've just added that in for MDE has just added that in for one of their demographics after a couple of years out of compliance of state and federal law on that. So again, like we know there's not a lot of population level data that does have that as a demographic option, but I just wanted to kind of brainstorm as like, what are other creative ways you see that we could use Minnesota Compass as we're trying to better understand and illuminate trends in foster care in Minnesota.
So I want to make sure I understand this. So would the indicator be the percent of youth currently in foster care?
Possibly, and probably at a population level, or like, you know, at either county or regional levels, that would be the case.
Okay.
You know, Minnesota has a state funded but county administered system. So there are always, each county has their very specific tracking. But it is sometimes hard to do county by county comparison because of, oh, thank you. Yeah, I had thought I had explored Minnesota Compass, but I've never seen this.
Yeah, Sherry just dropped in a project that we have been working on for, I think, maybe 5 years, and it's due for an update.
Amazing.
But it does have
I
some
don't know why I
indicators on
haven't
foster
found
care.
this on your website. Perfect.
So I will say that it is for children under 6,
Okay.
but it does go county by county, and there's a map, and you can click on that map and look at it that way. So.
And Elena, I would add too, I think that folks are gearing up to update that data in the next year or two. And so if you, I know this is a project focused specifically on, Risk and Reach is focused specifically on early childhood. But if you want to put a little plug in for adding it for kids that are older than that, you might want to shoot a note even to Sherry, and she could pass that along. All of the way that update works is it's specific data requests from the Department of Human Services. And so it would just be an ad to get the additional ages. So it may not go anywhere, but it doesn't hurt to ask.
I would love to chat either, you know, with Sherry or other members of your team, or even bring in some of our foster leaders to talk about that, because there's some questions that they've been asking that are like, we don't know how to answer this because we can't find the data. But yeah, I think that would be really helpful, especially if this project is focused just on early childhood. But if there are other projects that are focused on like homelessness or some other areas, we know there's some key places for older fosters. Like we don't have great Minnesota data that's publicly available that we've been able to find so far. But for instance, from like national data, fosters are the most predictably homeless, but we're not tracking that pipeline in Minnesota. And so I think we're missing like key prevention or like understanding areas. So I don't know if there are other places where other projects where that might play in as well. But yeah, would love to be able to have some of our foster leaders bring up some of the questions they've had with team members to see what's possible within Minnesota Compass.
Sure.
Because our small team doesn't have that capacity.
Yeah, for sure. The other place too would be the Wilder Homeless Study, which they did not do this year. And you might know more than I do. I'm not as familiar with that data, but they may track youth in foster care too.
Not that I've seen in the past.
Okay.
But yeah, I've put out a question to see if that's something that could be added in the future.
Okay, great.
Great. And I guess a question, Sherry, potentially for you for this early childhood project is this data? I know it's from the Department of Human Services. Do you know if they're pulling it from their annual out-of-home care reports, or is it more comprehensive data than what's in their out-of-home care reports?
Go ahead, Sherry.
Ellen.
I don't know, Elena. That's a good question. That would be a question for the folks who are heading up that work. Um, I would imagine it's all, reported from the county, directly, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know enough to answer that.
Great. Well, I'm excited to look over that more and dive into that data. And we'll maybe have some more questions after that. But yeah, I think if there's any plugs I can do, or like, conversations to that would be where your team would be interested in talking with fosters to see like what questions they have about their community's experience. It's been one of the challenging parts of our orgs. We're a very young organization, so just kind of, entering year 4 right now, but it's been one of the most challenging parts is like the lack of data out there, because we know like we're driven by our relationships with young people and use their stories to identify what are our advocacy points, but systems need data and it's really hard to move, and sometimes it's really hard to find that data to go into our advocacy conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I appreciate this, and I'll look over these resources and then Sherry follow up with you for potentially some more questions.
That sounds good. And in the meantime, I will contact the person who's in charge of this project and find out a little bit more about their data collection.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Helena. Any other questions? Well, we have you all here. Great. Well, thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And nice to connect with you for this brief time over lunch. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.